Welcome to the Crime Dawg Podcast with your host and content creator, Johnny FIORICA, who was picked last in kickball in St. Anthony's every year from kindergarten through 8th grade. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crime Dawg Podcast. I'm your host, content creator, Johnny FIORICA, retired detective with the Rochester, New York Police Department after 30 long years. Sitting alongside with me, my two trusted co-hosts. First one on the mic, David Simpson. David was a legendary street cop, SWAT cop, undercover cop, rounded out his career in the Rochester, New York homicide unit. David, welcome to the pod, brother.
Happy to be here, boys. Thanks. Jay.
David, I clapped for you this week.
I know. I appreciate it. It makes me feel good about myself.
Attaboy. I try to build you up.
Jason Blanchard, next up on the mic. He's also a legendary street cop, 2.5 decades worth. Dedicated to Flower City, to all sides of the city, Genesee, Lake, Clinton. He's also a legendary hostage negotiator, lead hostage negotiator, self-proclaimed 1994 Hall of Famer, Jason Blanchard. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Jonathan. And again, HNT. Oh, David's clapping. Thank you, David. That's a nice golf clap after the waste management this weekend. Thank you for the golf clap. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So listen here, we got a good one today, right? You could see, by the way, full disclosure, my hat, Buffalo Sabres, and you'll understand why I'm wearing a hat in a second. However, I had to go to my wife's closet for this hat. That's why I said full disclosure. I don't know if I want to say it's a woman's hat. I just think it's a non-fat head guy's hat. It feels like
you look like a woman wearing it.
Thank you. It feels like a yarmulke on my head, which is
big guy with a little hat.
Yeah, it's just like I had to wear something to support our guy tonight because this pod is phenomenal. First guest ever on the cast. We were doing some experimental stuff months ago. I reached out to David's bestie from years and years ago since they were 12 years old, Rory Fitzpatrick, hockey legend in Rochester and all over the globe. We interviewed Rory. It was a great, great interview. We're super stoked because he's getting inducted in a couple days of the Amerks Hall of Fame. So this is why we're going to drop this Crime Dawg bonus episode because Rory was on. We talked to him for about 30, 40 minutes. He was a great interview. David made me promise during the interview not to fanboy him because I follow, since I was a little kid, reading the sports section of the Times Unit Democrat and Chronicle. I literally followed everybody in Rochester from Rory Fitzpatrick to Gianta to Abby Wambach to Pat Kelly, who played at Syracuse, and all these Rochester legends that played professional sports. Rory was just a super, super guy to interview. Dave, you're besties with him, like I said, man. Was that not a great interview or what?
Yeah, it was great to have him on, and it was nice for him to be the first one to kind of christen the podcast. And it turns out, we didn't know that at the time, but he gets inducted into the Amerks Hall of Fame. He's the first Rochester resident ever to go into the Amerks Hall of Fame. He, I believe, was the first Rochester resident, Rochester youth hockey guy to score a goal for the Amerks. It's just really cool. I'm super proud of him. I was playing hockey with him from time we were 11, 12 years old. He was always great. He was always a great teammate. We kind of knew he was destined for great things, even right from the get-go back then. And just to see the person he turned out to be and the player he was when he played is fantastic.
Yeah, he was super cool to talk to. Jay, David's got the Amerks hat. I got the Sabres hat. I totally am cool, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You got that sweet lettuce on top of your dome, something that David and I don't have. So I'm sure Rory is totally cool with you not repping a hat from one of the legendary teams that he played with, because I know, because he also has a great hairline. I sat next to him for well over an hour talking to Rory. Excellent hairline. He wouldn't want you to cover that up. He was cool to interview. Jay, you weren't there with us, but obviously you know Rory and you know who he is.
I certainly do. And Johnny, I also have a fair amount of product in my hair tonight, so I appreciate you recognizing how tight it looks. So thank you for that. Yeah, Rory, definitely, right? I mean, what a great thing for the Amerks to honor him. And, Rory, even though he's one of David's best buddies, he's still a huge supporter of law enforcement, even though knowing what David did. So, I mean, that speaks volumes, right? So, no, I think it's a great interview. I think it's a great thing for a Rochester boy to be honored. So, kudos to him and congrats. And I think this is, the people enjoy the interview.
Yeah. So guys, thanks for your input. Rory, we love you. Thanks for coming on our pod. We're so happy we got to pay the homage or homage to you because you're well worth it. Congratulations, my brother. Crime Dawg applauds you, everything you did in the AHL, the NHL, repping Rochester. We love you, brother. Thanks again. Hello. Welcome to the Crime Dawg Podcast. I'm your host and content creator, Johnny FIORICA. I'm with my trusted co-host, Dave SIMPSON. David, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. I've known him for a very long time. Not that I stalked him, but he's been in the media.
You fanboyed him for a long time.
I did.
I knew him for a long time. You fanboyed him for a long time.
We talked about this.
Hey, Davey, can you get
I did. You know what's so funny? When we talked on the phone and you said, you're going to fanboy Rory, aren't you? And I said, I'll probably fanboy. I might fanboy Rory a little bit. Because, as a person growing up in Rochester, I always cheered for the Rochester guys, right? I always cheered for all our professional athletes, always was in their corner, no matter who they were, no matter what sport they played. Everybody from basketball to Abby Wambach when she was doing her thing in every facet of the world that she played and dominated. But I am super excited, a little fanboyish with Rory coming aboard. I'm super excited for a guy that we've all known for a long time. He's a Rochester native, had a wildly successful professional hockey career. We want to welcome former NHL player, Rory Fitzpatrick. Rory, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So you had a hell of a life, right? We all know where you are now. Let's kind of bring our audience back to where it all started. You're an Irondequoit guy, kind of like we did. You kind of overheard us in the intro.
Sure.
Talk to us about Rory Fitzpatrick, how you started, kind of give us a snapshot of how you went to where you are today, and then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of some of the good stuff in between.
Sure. So I was born and raised here in Rochester, obviously grew up in Irondequoit. Started playing hockey at a young age. I had an older brother. My dad was president of the Rochester Lions Club at the time. Spent, a lot of time at the rinks. Loved hockey, loved sports. As I got older, I chose hockey. Maybe not the best sport at the time or one of the better ones I was at, but I enjoyed it the most. So continued with that. And when I was in 10th grade, moved up to Sudbury, Ontario to continue my career and hopefully, aspirations of playing in the NHL. In that time, I would still come home and finish school here in Irondequoit. So I did graduate from Irondequoit High School. I was lucky enough to be drafted by the Montreal Canadiens in 1993. And my career from there is pretty great and enjoyable. I had some amazing experiences being an NHL hockey player. So, and always came back here and made this my home. So we never, I never truly left Rochester. I always wanted to come back. Married my wife, Tracy, who I knew from Irondequoit. So we had a solid home base here and ended up raising my 4 kids here.
Awesome. So now just to walk it back for a second. So you went to the O.
Yes.
It's called the O.
Yep.
The Ontario Hockey League, right?
Sure.
So back then, and I don't know how it is now because I'm not that great with hockey. I just followed it a little bit because my nephew played. When you're in the O, do you lose your collegiate eligibility or how does that work?
Yeah, you do. So, I don't know how it is now, but at that time, as soon as you played a regular season game or spent a certain amount of time on the OHL roster,
right,
you would lose your college eligibility. So
right,
you're paid not much, actually not really at all, but due to that, you do lose your college eligibility.
Yeah, that's super cool. My nephew, Michael Rotolo, he was goalie at RIP
Sure. Yep.
for 4 years. He got drafted, went into the U.
Yep.
So literally you got a kid who was in the Greece program forever, traveled all over America with my sister and brother-in-law. Because like you, he played up 2-3 age groups sometimes. So he went up in the U and he started with Green Bay. But in the U, they keep their college eligibility.
Yeah, so the USHL is the top American junior hockey league, and it's one of most of those kids are coming out of there and playing Division I hockey. Probably 90% of them are playing some level of college hockey. So it was impressive back then. I think it's even better now. There's some people that argue it might be just as good as major junior in Canada, but it's the top junior league for future college hockey players.
Yeah, I mean, he played for the Green Bay Gamblers. He played for Cedar Rapids. He won the Clark Cup. And literally some of the kids that I remember watching him play, they currently are in the NHL right now.
Absolutely. So every year players are getting drafted out of the USHL into the NHL. So it's more common now than it was back then. But, you see kids, the last couple of years, I think they've had a lot of top 10 draft picks coming out of that league.
Roar, why don't you tell them about the time you went to Thornhill and how the Montreal Canadiens actually saw you well before you ended up in Sudbury when we got dominated by the Thornhill team up in Toronto.
A lot of people say you never know who's watching, right? And you never know. So we were playing junior B hockey. I was playing with SIMPSON. I was one of the youngest, if not the youngest player on the team. And we had gone up there and, I knew that there'd be OHL scouts there. I had any idea that there was NHL scouts there. But when I was drafted by Montreal Canadiens at the draft table, one of the scouts had pulled me over and said, I had put you on our draft list from that tournament. And I think we lost that game like 11-1.
We got smoked.
And
let's just set the table. We were playing for the Rochester Monarchs, and we were coming to that, and we'd lost like 3 or 4 games all year. Like we were dominating everyone. We played around locally and regionally, and when we crossed the border, we even fared well against some teams we played. And that time, I think it was the Golden Horseshoe or
Golden Horseshoe. Yeah. Yep.
But we played this Thornhill team, and they had this kid Jeff O'Neill who ended up winning a Stanley Cup with Carolina, yeah, first overall. And he was I believe, was your age, maybe
1 year younger.
1 year younger, but I think he had 4 or 5 goals in the game. This is the kid was legit, and they dialed us up. And I thought everyone played bad, but I thought the story was fascinating because he literally got drafted. Yes, Sudbury solidified it, but correct me if I'm wrong. The guy fell in love with you.
Yeah, he did.
Getting our ass kicked against Thornhill.
Yeah, basically said you didn't give up. You guys were getting killed. You went out every shift and continue to play, didn't give up. And when people say, people watch your body language, they watch little things, that's a perfect example of it. So, being 15, 16 years old, going up and getting your butt kicked and getting screamed at our coach that another 15-year-old on the other team was kicking our butt, who ended up being the first, number 1 overall draft pick to the NHL. So, but so you never know who's watching or when your time's going to be. And, obviously I was able to go up into the O and have a great, career, but to know that the first look I got was at a junior B hockey tournament, losing 11-1, you have parents now that are constantly chasing. I got to be on the winning team. I got to be on the best team. The team's ranked in this. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They're looking, and you don't know what they're looking for at times either. So just the fact that you went out, you got your butt kicked, and you didn't give up to put you on the map at that time was a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
And people always ask me, like, what was it like, Rory, what was he like back then? Was he like the best player and stuff like that? And I'll say he was really good. But the biggest thing I always said about Rory was even when he was like a little kid, he was like a pro. Like he played the same, like that's a perfect example. Like he played the same way, game 41, practice 38. Like there was no variation to the game. It was like this kid comes out every day and it's just like doing it. Yeah. And so that's the big thing that there was talent and there was size and all this, but like the ebbs and flows of most players, he brought it every night. And that's a pro. That's how you.
That's awesome. So it's funny what you said that, right? So you talk about what the scouts are looking for, what they're looking. So it reminds me of a story with my nephew, Michael, because he played, I call him my nephew, Matty Lane. Yep. Matty Lane, sure. He's, in our culture, the Italian, like everyone's a niece and nephew, right? So, but Matty played at BU with Eichel on Eichel's line, and then the crew of kids that my nephew played with, JT Stingline, he played at Michigan. He played with Riley Bourbonnais, who played at RPI. Matty's older brother, Phil, played with the Coyotes organization. So listen to the stories because, with my sister, my brother-in-law, you hear all the parents talk. And the cool part was some of the scouts that were looking at these kids at a young age at some of these hockey tournaments, when they were 12, 13, they said that they would watch them on the ice. And then some of the major scouts would follow them around to the concession stand while they're playing video games to literally see how they're interacting with the other hockey players. Because, that's their true being, right? Mm-hmm. So they would how they interacted, and that's how some of them got recruited and some of them didn't get recruited because the scouts didn't like what they saw.
Yeah, you're splitting hairs, right? I mean, there's you have your Connor McDavids, you have your Eric Lindrosses, you go through and name your top stars. I mean, after that, you're splitting hairs, and there's a lot invested. You have people's careers, scouts and coaches.
Yeah.
So it's more than what you see on the ice, and like I said, there's if there's certain things you can't teach. There's certain things that you're not going to change in human beings to make them pros. Right. So talent is obviously necessary, but it's a little tiny things, and I know that's cliched, and you hear it all the time, and parents coming up, wow, if I just do this, it's going to work, but. It's a $1 billion industry, and there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of careers out there. So what you do after, what you do before, how you treat your teammates, how you treat opponents,
your parents,
everything. And, even more so now, everybody's under a microscope, right? Yeah. So you don't, there's no secrets out there anymore. So the kid in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan is just as known as the kid that's playing in Chicago or Toronto. So there's no secrets. And like I said, it boils down to that one little thing. Can I put him on the fourth line? Is he going to complain? Is he going to, pout? Or is he going to go out there and do his job in the fourth line? So I played with a lot of great hockey players from mites to the NHL. And the best players, the most talented players are not always the ones that are there at the end of the day. And NHL teams and NFL teams, they're puzzles. So you're trying to fit a puzzle into a very tight spot. So you can't have 6 number one defensemen on your team that are all going to be playing the power play, right? So you have to plug it in, and you say, how does this guy react in this situation? If he's not on the power play, is he going to pout? Is he going to be useful? Can I put him out 5 minutes a game? Can I put him out 20 minutes a game? Yeah. So
versatility.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, everybody's good.
Everyone's a star. Everyone's
a star at some point in their career, right? So, I was almost a point a game person in the OHL. I was on all-star teams in the American Hockey League and the OHL. So there's, that one separation. I mean, there was better players in the American Hockey League that don't play in the NHL because they don't fit into that puzzle. So, it can be a slight thing. Just maybe it's skating, maybe it's, hockey IQ. It could be size, but there's so much more than, he's the best skater, therefore he should. NHL teams aren't chosen like the squirt hockey teams are chosen. So,
and we've talked before. 59, he would say like, oh, this guy could play 10 games in the NHL. Like he could hold his own in the NHL for 10 games, but it's an 80 game, it's a 90 game season.
Yeah,
it's year after year. Can you do it every night? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like. And then size comes into it and work ethic. And can you bring it every night? But he's like, oh, this guy could, he wouldn't embarrass himself playing 10 games. Remember? I mean, we've had conversations. And it's like, and I was astonished by that. I was like, really? like he could fit in for 10 games. But then
I had a similar conversation with my son last night. So my son plays Division III hockey. His hockey IQ is out of the world, and he pays attention to little things. So we were talking about Chicago and Connor Bedard, and they've surrounded him with some really professional hockey players, real pros, and guys that come to the rink, do the same thing every day, act in a certain manner, and they might not be the best hockey players in the world, but these are consummate pros that have done it year in, year out. And, I think what Chicago's done and surrounded him with is going to be amazing compared to, kind of maybe how Buffalo handled Eichel a couple of years ago. I think the situation that Bedard's in with the Folignos, the Taylor Halls of the world,
Corey Perry,
these guys win, they compete. I was telling my son, the pros in the NHL do the same thing every day. They show up at the rink at the same time, go through the same routine, get on the ice early, get off the ice late, take care of their bodies. Those are the guys that play 15, 20 years in the league.
You know what I always thought was really interesting? It was like when I stopped playing, and obviously my career ended in college, but when I left college, playing college hockey, and went to the police department, like this transition was so seamless because it was almost like joining another hockey team. You get dressed in the locker room, the music's going, you have your leaders, you have your Joe Briganis in the locker room that take young guys under their wing and show them the way. Not blowing smoke up your ass because you don't need it anymore, but like guys like you, Johnny, who looked out for a guy like me and taught me how to be a street cop and like brought me along, and Frank Umbrino and these guys showed me the right way to do it and how to bring it every night and how you do it and you don't cheat the game. You know what I mean? It is the game. Police work's a game. Playing pro hockey is a game. Yep. You don't cheat the game. It's the same thing. So when the guys go to the NHL, it sounds like it's pretty much the same thing. Like the pros pass along that guidance that right. a rookie in the NHL would need, just like we did when we were on the job.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I often compare, somewhat professional, like the football and the hockey to police work in that. There's a lot of testosterone in that locker room.
Yeah.
There's a lot of manhood in that locker room. Some guys are puffing and some guys actually have it. Usually the guys that don't have it or pretend that they have it, and the guys that do have it don't show it. But it's almost like you, right? Like you talk about the guys that showed up on game day.
Yep.
They're the consummate professionals, kind of like what David's talking about. Well, let me just tell you this, so don't get jealous of me, Rory, okay? I was the king of the double blades in 1970-something at Edgerton Park. My mother would buy me skates every year, okay? And I was like a newborn, well, at the time, baby. Well, not a baby.
Fawn.
Like, just thank you.
Yeah.
I was very, very generous of you.
You went to Aquinas. That's
literally
limited vocabulary.
Literally skates like this.
Yeah. And went to Aquinas for 20 minutes. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I did. I went to AQ for 2 years and
20 minutes.
Then I saw the rest of my career in public education for reasons known to all.
I did one year.
But industry.
Same pattern.
But I literally, when I tell you, I just couldn't get it. My mother would buy me skates every year, like the new Bowers, and
I've seen you walk down the hall. I know you didn't get it. I've seen you walk.
Maybe that's your problem. I didn't get new skates until I was like 12 or 13 years old.
You got mics.
Until I outgrew my brother. I think it was the first time I got new skates. So
I'll tell you, I would look and I would dread. I knew the skate box. I would look. I'm like, oh my God, I hope these are not.
Listen, what the FIORICAs do for a living that you were getting new skates every year. Every other kid I knew was getting like hand-me-downs.
Yeah, Papa FIORICA, let's just put it this way, was not a cop. But yeah, so I would look at the box every year under the tree and go, oh my God,
yeah.
I got to put them on once. I got to show mama that I can't skate. And then, whatever, she bought them till I was like 28. And then she finally decided, okay, this kid can't skate. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I applaud you guys because I don't know how the hell you stand up on a however inch blade and fly down the ice. I do have to say something. So talking about physicality, and talking about Rochester people. I remember it was like, I don't know, like Easter Sunday maybe, and we were watching a hockey game. I don't remember what day it was, but I saw Gianta, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was.
Which one?
Brian.
Okay.
I saw Brian, AQ boy.
Yep.
But I saw Brian playing the Bruins, and he was in front of the net with Chara, who's like 7'12" on skates, right?
Yep.
We all know Brian's not a tall guy, but he's an animal. And I remember Chara cross-checking him in the back because
Well, Chara must have taken a knee to cross-check him in the back.
Well, what I'm saying is though, but Gianta wasn't scared one bit.
Yeah.
No. I mean, he kept on getting cross-checked. Now, if Chara literally skated by me, if I could skate, I would literally feign an injury and be like, time out, coach. I'm going to the locker room. After this, I ain't doing it. Gianta didn't give one flying out. He stood in front of that goal, and he must have hit him several times. And by the way, I hear stories about Gianta's legs there. He's like a house, and Chara barely moved the fucking kid.
Yeah.
It's hard to move a fire hydrant. I tried.
I'd prefer to play against Chara than Gianta.
No shit.
Well, yeah. There's the smaller guys, I mean, they have nothing to lose, right? So, I'd prefer to go into a corner with Chara, and if he gets the puck, then everybody expects it, right?
Yeah.
Brian goes in, and, Brian can out-squat me and out-skate me and everything else. He comes out of the pile, and there's 20,000 people going, how'd you let the little guy get out of the corner? So I would always prefer to go after a bigger guy than a littler guy.
You said that fighting, too.
Yeah,
you said you'd rather fight a big guy than a guy that's undersized. Like some of my size, you would rather not fight. 5'11", 190-pound guy is not.
Absolutely, it's a no-win situation. I beat you. You're supposed to, and what are you fighting him for? If you fight a bigger guy or hit a bigger guy and you lose, it's everybody thinks you're brave, and what a great job. So I always said that. I always preferred to battle with a bigger guy than a smaller guy. So and Brian's a freak. He's a freak of nature. And, so man, how's a guy 5? I don't even know what he lies about his height, but maybe 5'6", 5'7". But you see him off the ice. I mean, I laugh when you say, "Oh, my son's small. He's going to play." Brian played, and I'm like, "Well, Brian, put a tape measure around Brian's legs, and tell me your son's going to play." So.
I went surfing with him out in Runaway Bay give a shout out to my buddy Brad Preston and Wake Surf 585. But we went out there surfing the waves on his boat. His legs still are like, it's shocking. They're enormous. They're like 2 of my legs on one of his legs. Like it's almost a genetic freak. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, my nephew says the same thing about Eichel because Maddie, Lane, and him are best friends. Together, their weddings. He said his legs are like tree trunks.
Yeah.
Who would you say is physically the toughest player you ever to play against in the NHL?
Oh, that's a good one. I usually always say Peter Forsberg. He was amazingly strong, nasty, dirty. After him, I'd probably say Eric Lindros. I mean, talk about freaks. He was a monster and could play and was nasty and mean.
What would he have done if their concussions didn't come? I mean,
he would have been one of the best of all times, I think. Just, the size, his skill level. If he played in today's game, he'd be Tage Thompson, on steroids. So
he's a bully with skill.
Yeah, he really is. And he was a mean person. And, there's a few of those, Chris Pronger, those people, they enjoyed, hurting people. That's one of those things you can't teach, and probably get in trouble for saying that these days. But, when you get a guy out there that's, big, strong, and has a, meanness to him, that enjoys the meanness too. So, that was a lot of guys back then.
And especially those 3 guys, you're talking meanness and you're talking high skill level, like, Hall of Famers. Like you're talking high 1% skill with mean, nasty physicality. I mean, that's just.
See, I wonder, so you talk about those guys and how they were they the same way off ice, or were they able to differentiate between the 2 different worlds, on ice and off ice?
Yeah. So I knew Chris Pronger the best of them all, and he was pretty mean off the ice as well. He was confident. He had an edge to him. I had a great relationship with him. I didn't see, that side, but there was times where you could see that, he demanded certain things when he was off the ice and on the ice. But yeah, I don't know about Lindros or some of the other guys, but there were guys that complete opposite too. I play with some of the toughest guys in the league, and you get them off the ice, they're just big teddy bears. So you could, wrestle them, punch them, and they won't do anything back, but you'd never drop the gloves with them on the ice. So, but there are players, and, Chris Pronger's probably one, and he'd probably admit it and laugh and be proud of it, but he was mean on and off the ice.
So you played for in some pretty cool cities in Montreal. You talk about St. Louis and Nashville, Buffalo, Vancouver, Philly. So if you had to, and I know, we're down the thruway from Buffalo, so you don't have to say Buffalo.
Yeah.
But what was the coolest place you played? What was your most favorite?
I was very lucky, so I can't nail down one. I was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Yankees of hockey, right? And my first year in the league was the year that they were closing down the Forum. So I got to play in the Montreal Forum and open up the Bell Center. And that year, it was a hockey history lesson. Jean Beliveau, Rocket Richard, Guy Lafleur. These are people that were around on a daily basis. My wife was hanging out with Jean Beliveau and sitting with him during games and riding in the elevator with the Rocket Richard.
Right.
So, and playing in Montreal is just, it's amazing. It's playing, like I said, I always compare it to the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
So that was absolutely amazing. Vancouver, one of the best places. If it wasn't so darn expensive, I'd probably be living out there. But obviously Canadian brings a different element to the game. So, me, who's a 6th, 7th defenseman, journeyman, as I get called, there was times my kids had ear infections. I'm in a store at 4 a.m. buying medicine, and someone comes up and wants to know what happened in the game that night, and so that makes it very interesting and fun as well. Your kids are in school and they're trading hockey cards, so that was fantastic. And then being able to play in basically my hometown. That's not an easy thing. And if I hadn't played in Montreal and I hadn't played in Vancouver, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed it as much, because the pressure's there, and you got phone calls, you got text messages, you got requests, you got added pressure. So those are my 3 favorite places to have played, and each for a unique reason. But playing in Canada is special. You're a celebrity. You're somebody.
It was interesting, because when he was drafted and he was playing in Montreal, I was in college. But I took a different notion. Like, I felt very... Like, we were so close, like, we were pretty close growing up. Like, he was one of my boys, but I always felt like I didn't want to be that guy that, like, always called from back home, like, can I get this? Can I come to the game? I didn't want to fanboy him. So I, like, a lot of the times just left him alone. Yeah. Like when we saw each other and stuff, we were close, but it was for that time. I'm sure different friends played it different ways, but it's unique when you have a guy you grew up playing with that goes to the NHL, because I was very much wanted to protect, trying to be that. I was probably way the other way, but I just remember thinking that it brings back memories, like seeing him on TV. I would be at the bar in Fredonia, Coughlin's bar, watch him score against the Rangers in the playoffs and at the Garden. And I'm a Ranger fan. Yeah. I'm like, that's my boy. And like, you want to like get on the payphone and call him, but...
Yeah, there's a misconception too that everything's free, right? So, you go to a different city, you're paying for tickets, nothing's free. You don't get any free tickets on the road. You get 2 free tickets at home, right? And so it can be expensive. Some of these guys that live in Toronto and they go back home to play, I mean, they're losing money when they play. Yeah. So, Toronto's $200 a ticket, and you got to buy 50 tickets. Yeah. It's a wash for that day. So it's there's a misconception that everything's free. Can you get me sticks? Can you get me this? Yeah. So it's not that way. So
walk me back, because I caught something you said about Vancouver. So what was it about Vancouver, the city, the community? You said if it wasn't so damn expensive, you might live there. So what was it about Vancouver?
Yeah, obviously just playing in a Canadian city, number one. We lived right downtown. Absolutely beautiful place to live. Mm-hmm. Everything's within 20 minutes. So in downtown Vancouver, it doesn't snow. You can be on a mountain that just got 4 feet of snow the night before within 20 minutes. The culture, just the living is just a truly amazing place to be. I always tell people, if you have a chance to visit, get out to Whistler, get out to Vancouver, because you don't think of it. But it's truly a remarkable place. I mean, people would come out, you go out whale watching, and then you go watch the Vancouver Canucks at 7:00 at night. So just an amazing place to live. The people are friendly. So it was just a really cool spot. And, it seemed like nobody was from Vancouver too, right? So we moved out, they had a big reception for all the new students at school. So you got to know people. Just a really welcoming spot. And, like I said, playing in Canada is always fabulous. But I didn't know much about the West Coast. I mean, we never went farther than Cape Cod as a kid. So when we got out there, it just was truly a remarkable place to live.
So you're up in Canada and you're playing, you get drafted, you're in Montreal. And I totally agree, because it's a great analogy you use about the New York Yankees in Montreal. So you talk about these different pro sports, right? Like the Yankees or the NFL. Most of those organizations, they got the old rookie hazing. So where I know that they ring up a huge bar and food tab, and then all of a sudden, all the big studs making $70 million walk out, and the kid that just got signed had to pay for it. Sure. So is there that tradition in the NHL? Or?
Yeah, so we do rookie meals. So our rookie meal was $16,000 in 1995, 96. So
that's $36,000 in today's economy.
We're out.
My wife would be proud of me.
Yeah, we were out in Los Angeles. Chris Farley was in the restaurant that night, so we bought him dinner. So that's my big story. But yeah, so there's 4 rookies, so it's $4,000, each for that night, and it's part of it.
It's not too bad. That's like my bar tab last weekend.
Yeah, if you're lucky like me, you get to you play a bunch of years, you get it back.
Yeah,
so it's
right.
It's the guy that was maybe played 1 year, 2 years, that it's a little bit different impact, but I was able to capture some of that back throughout the years.
I think that camaraderie. I think that it's not hazing, but I think that is a camaraderie builder. Yeah. It's kind of like a rite of passage. It's kind of like, hey kid, welcome to our club,
sure,
kind of a thing.
Times were different then. You didn't make as much money. I mean, we made money, but we didn't make So when I first got called up, I had Lyle Odeline take me to the suit store, give me a suit. On the road, I hardly ever paid for a meal. I think that's changed throughout the years with some of these guys making so much money. There's not that bring them into the league and show them. I mean, these kids they're at the draft with $3,000 suits, right? I had a sport coat and a pair of khakis when I got drafted. So that back then, when you have players like Pierre Turgeon, Mark Recchi, Lyle Odeline, they're taking you out to dinner, they're paying for it, they're buying your suits. Great. It also makes that $4,000 a little bit easier to swallow.
Yeah.
All that stuff. There was hazing, there was different things, but nothing like you hear the horror stories of. And, to me, that was a great thing. And it was a great way to introduce and to, once that was over, that was it, right? Yeah. You're part of the group, you're an NHLer, and you didn't have to worry about any of that going forward. Yeah.
So David and I were talking about the one stat that's not written down anywhere about the West Side versus East Side kids from Rochester.
Oh, I was telling them the other day. Yeah. You blew my mind the other day. We were riding back.
Tell our audience about that.
Yeah, we were riding back, and we were talking about how difficult it is. It's difficult, obviously, to play professional sports, and Rory had an interesting take on it.
To my knowledge, there has not been someone raised on the East Side of Rochester that's had a long-term NHL career.
I threw out the argument of Marty Reasoner, who was an Honey Falls guy.
Honey Falls, that's
Fitz
south.
and I debated intently over whether that was East Side.
Is it even in Monroe County?
I don't know.
Maybe
I failed that day of McQuaid.
Geography.
Yeah, whatever. I didn't know what to call it, so I just had to skip over it.
Yeah, so you can make whatever you want out of that. I always found it interesting. I don't know what Irondequoit's considered. I think we kind of get left out of the whole West East fight, but it's interesting to me, and it's stayed true. The East Side has produced a lot of great hockey players, and you mentioned a lot of those names earlier in the podcast with the younger groups, and then they've gone on to play and have great careers in the American Hockey League in Europe and stuff. But even Shane Prince, Spencer Port, so all the names I know are from the West Side of the city.
Get puzzled too often. It puzzled me. I was literally wow, that's
when we started talking, right? So we started talking. I was like, was it a generational thing? Because when I'm 53 and I'm thinking, okay, Lakeshore,
sure.
And then SIR, right? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much when we grew up.
Yeah, pretty much Lakeshore was the coup de grace of hockey.
Genesee Valley kind of got introduced in.
Yeah, I mean, when we were in juniors, Thomas Creek came along. So that's 30-something years ago. So I think you can definitely relate.
We're old.
Yeah, I know.
Jeez.
I think you can relate that to my age group, but over
I fall in that age group, by the way.
Yeah,
it's not like you're in an age group and I'm in an age group. We're in the age group together.
I think that phases out, say 15 years ago.
Right.
So it's shifted. More kids on the East Side are playing hockey now than they are on the West Side. So I'm not going to put my opinion on that.
I'll put my opinion.
A little bit.
It's become a rich man's game, and I think it's the more I will always fall back on the more blue collar the player is upbringing. I think blue collar upbringing with talent goes a long way, and I think when it's become a money game, and Rory mentioned it, guys showing up at the draft with $3,000 suits. Well, it's because mom and dad have money. That's why they're playing hockey. You're a lot of country club kids are playing hockey now. So, I think in Rochester, there's a lot of blue collar on the West Side. That's what I personally take out of it. I'm not saying it's the end all, but it's certainly something. It's an interesting take anyway.
I don't think anyone will accuse our podcast of being.
There's no one listening, John.
Yeah, I know, right? But listen, thanks for coming, man.
This was great.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
We really appreciate you. We appreciate all the good work.
Awesome.
man.
Had a great time, guys. Thank you so much
All
for
right,
having
thanks,
me.
man. God bless.
Roger that.
We hope you stick with us for future episodes. But like my brother-in-law Frankie Grassi says, if you can't make it, who cares? Ciao.